everyone. Welcome back to A Creative Affair. I don't know if you heard Momo barking in the backyard. That's Len's cute dog. So
He's keeping guard on us to make sure no one sneaks through the gate and sneaks up on us.
absolutely. I know we have one of those too. It's so great. Well, one of the things that we love about doing this podcast is, we talk about our creative passions. And so today we're going to discuss the art and life, or all things related to Georgia O'Keeffe, because she was so passionate about her art. And I'm just super excited to kind of dive into this. I actually wrote lessons I learned from Georgia O'Keeffe. I have a little nope. I have a little like journal entry that's like lessons I've learned from Georgia O'Keeffe. I love that.
Brie, I so love George's work, and I'm so dying to find out what you learnt from her work. So this is going to be a fantastic discussion. So what did you learn?
Well,
Can I ask?
Yeah, I learned a bunch of stuff. So one of the things, and maybe I'll just kind of intersperse them as we go, but one of the things that I learned was just try. You just go try, and I wrote down. I watched a really interesting documentary. It was on. I'll actually link to it in the notes. Let me make a little note of that. Link to YouTube video.
There's so many, isn't there?
Yeah,
and
there really are.
There's some fantastic movies about her as well, which are quite interesting to watch, and I've been enjoying them too.
And yeah, at the one that I really loved was about it. It tackled all kinds of things, and I actually screen recorded a quote from her so I could write it down. And she said, "I thought someone could tell me how to paint landscape, but I never found that person." She said, "I had to just settle down and try." And we should mention that, I think this would be a good time to mention that when she was growing up, maybe around age 12, people would ask her what she wanted to do. And she was like, "I'm going to be a painter." So she always had decided she wanted to be a painter. So that was in her heart. But she went about it. I don't think she knew exactly what would come out of her. We don't know this at the beginning of our journey, what exactly we're going to end up creating that is going to be our passion necessarily. And maybe you have a different opinion on that, Len, but she went to art school and learned, this realistic oil painting, and she was really doing a lot of that was the art at the time. It was realistic. It was realism. And there was a time where I'm talking a lot. I'm sorry, but I really want to share this part, and then I'll give you a turn. There was a time that she put up all of these paintings that she made, and she looked at each one, and she was like, "Okay, who did I paint this for? Who did I paint this to please?" And each one that she looked at, it was someone different or that she painted to please someone else and not herself. And so she put it all away. And that's when she said this, that I thought someone could tell me how. Because all of those other ones were from someone else telling her how. And it wasn't until she put that all away and she was like, "What am I going to tell myself?" She said, "I just had to settle down and try." And that's when she took out. She said, "I just started with paper and charcoal." And that's really the basics, right? Light and shadow. And she just started creating what really wanted to come out of her. And I just think that's beautiful. And that was my number 2, is listen to what your creative spirit wants. So that's my other one. I'll tell you more. What about you, Len? Thoughts about her?
So the person that really taught her to paint landscape was really herself. And that was an amazing discovery and such a beautiful thing to explore, is that uh, our journeys into creativity always come back into exploring who we are and following our innermost person. And it's this journey of discovery, isn't it? And rather than making art for other people, but making it for ourselves and for our own enjoyment, um, those are original charcoal artworks on paper. They're the ones that Stiglitz exhibited without her permission. Like, where's the consent there? That's we could talk about that. But um, uh, what an unhealthy start to a relationship. But um, uh, these incredible artworks where she starts to explore just the joy in shape and design and uh, nature. Like, one of my favorite things about her is that her inspiration comes from nature. She says it's all there. There's so much there out there to take from and to and paint. So she really doesn't uh, draw from her inner imagination. She starts with reality and then works from there to create her incredible artworks. I find that a beautiful way of working that she has.
I mean, she didn't go far. She just painted right what was around her. And I really love that. I mean, there's one of the paintings, I think, I saved a couple on my phone. Like, there's one about there's the road in winter or road to, anyway, it's
Albuquerque or
just,
something, is it?
yeah, Abiquiu, and it's just a shape, and it's in winter, and it's just a kind of a black
A
line.
calligraphy mark, isn't it? It's like a
Yeah,
calligraphy
yeah.
mark across the page.
And if you don't know her background, then you're like, wow, what a beautiful, that's like an interesting shape. And it really is just the road from her window. Like, that's so she, she is an American, what did we call her? She's American modernist. Oh, shoot.
The mother of American modernism, and
Thank
I
you.
also like to call her the grandmother of American abstract painting, because this whole abstraction, uh, is really, really centered very much around her. And the grandmother or the mother, uh, Stiglitz is famously quoted as saying, finally, a woman painting and works of art on paper, and was just totally enamored and besotted with her work, and then with her, which is yeah, very, very beautiful.
It is. So one of my lessons is from her is less is more, because I find
Mm.
myself drawn to that abstractionism, and that line. I don't think we're necessarily here to like analyze her work necessarily, but I do love learning that sometimes in our work we don't need all of the things. The less can be more. Less can be beautiful. Even just the basics and shapes. And that's how she saw. She said, "I saw shapes." And by the way, he exhibited her work when she sent those charcoal
Hmm. To
sketches.
a
And
friend.
yeah, but she said before she sent a I almost said email. No, that's not how she works. She sent a letter to her friend, and she said, "I have some work and I'm either going to send it to you or to Stieglitz. And I won't know until I go to address the package." And this is how she worked. I mean,
Isn't that
she just,
beautiful?
right? And so she just kind of went with her like gut instinct. And I don't think I honestly, if I could guess, she didn't really fret about it. She was like, "Okay, whatever happens, whatever I feel needs to happen." And that's totally how she worked, like total creative instinct. Like,
Mm.
I'm going to go and mail this thing, and whose address should I put on here? And it was her friend's. But I think because she had sent her friend that letter, she was like, well, Stieglitz needs to see this. And then he was like, oh,
Very much so. But abstraction is just like that. We start with reality, and through this process of simplification and stripping
hmm
away, and getting down to the basis. And that that we're talking about one painting, but we're not really. We're talking about a whole series of this road and different simplifications. And she knew it inside out just from driving along it, from walking along it, seeing it through the
staring at,
window,
yes, looking
staring at
at
it.
her window.
There's a photograph that she took of it. There's multiple paintings and drawings of it where she's exploring this beautiful shape. And um, us as viewers, we don't know what she was thinking, but we as viewers can look at it as a beautiful calligraphy mark across an incredible canvas, or we could also question, where does this road lead to? You know, uh, why does she take us down it, and where's it going to? Or and really, listening and studying her, it's the road to her rather than the road away off into the distance. This is the path to get to her, to where she is, where she's the most happiest. Um, that's an assumption, but
Sure.
painting prolifically and very, very grounded in that sense of place and profusely.
I think it's a good assumption to make because she talks about being in New Mexico as this place that's like it's like almost like magical for her. Like somehow like she was
Yes.
drawn there and in fact she was drawn there like that was something that she was like, I've got to go. And so she just went. In fact, Stieglitz never went to New Mexico. She just was like, oh, by the way, I don't know if she got in the car or she was on a train, I can't remember, but she just left one day and ended up in New Mexico. That's what it seemed like to me when I was like, reading
I
or
think she
listening.
went to visit a friend down there.
Oh, maybe is that what it is?
Yeah, yeah, and went to
We're not
stay with
experts.
her.
And she was just enamored. And I get it. Isn't New Mexico the land of enchantment? I think that's what the state is. It's called the land of enchantment, which I totally agree. Having been to New Mexico, it is enchanting. There's something about the desert, and there's just is something about the desert. I can't really explain it. Something else about the desert, and that she brings into her art is these bones. And if you look at her work, she's got all these different bones with like different perspectives. She's got skulls, she's got pelvises and all kinds of things. And you think she'd been enamored kind of with the death of it all, because that's what it usually means to us, right? But no, she was like, no, I love the shape.
Mm. We see the character in them, don't we? In her paintings, she not characterizes them, but we actually feel the character of the cow or the horse, of that animal, as if the spirit still lives on.
And she talks about how they're living. She feels like they're more
Mm.
alive than anything, which I think is really interesting.
And that's something about that sense of place too, don't you think? That it has
Yeah, that connection.
a sense of it's alive, and that in the desert, it's one of these places where we really feel uh, the spirit in the earth, and it seems to be amplified because of the whistling of the sounds coming through, perhaps the dryness,
The
the crispness
heat.
of the air, the heat,
It's like the
the
earth is just laid
echoes.
bare there.
Mm.
Yeah, it's
Very much so.
fascinating.
It's
Yeah.
such a different place to being in a forest or somewhere that's wet and green, and there's a very, very different sense of um, feeling. And in a forest, the forest feels alive, and you forget that the ground is as well, and what's happening under what we can see. But in the desert, we get that because we strip away so much of the plants, I think, um, we connect more with the geology of that place in
Mhm.
many senses.
Well, and I just find it so fascinating that she was so drawn there and, that, that's where she decided to spend, the rest of her life once she got there. But there were other places that she spent time in New York City with Stieglitz, and she also found that fascinating. In fact, she painted there are some of New York, and she's like, I'm going to paint New York, and he's like, what are you going to do that everybody else, people haven't done? And she did, and she was like, well, I don't know, but I'm going to see. So going back to these bones, that's another thing. One of my lessons personally is like try a new perspective, because what she does is she actually has paintings where it looks like there's a bone on the ground and you are like head on the ground looking through a bone up
Into the
like
landscape, yes.
yeah, into the landscape. And to me that's such a different perspective. That's not something that we would normally do, and I think this can apply to all genres of any kind of art, photography, music. Like what other perspective can you take in your own work, that might help you see a little bit differently,
Mm.
and I think she really explored that, and in fact bones in different colors. Like she did one, she's like, I decided I would switch things up and do a red bone and a yellow sky, and so she just did. Like, why not be unafraid to experiment?
Mm. There's such a huge lesson here about um, taking things from your life that are just here, aren't they? And that aren't far away, but they're right here, and the things that are interesting to you and that you follow. Like there's so much in the desert to find, and these are the objects and the places that really captured her attention, and she kept coming back to them over and over and created an amazing body of work around the things that really grabbed her attention, and like the flowers, skies. Um, I personally absolutely love her watercolors, and the I find them just so amazing as a painter to look at. Watercolors was one of my favorite mediums as a younger person, so uh, I'm drawn to them, and that's my passion.
Yeah, I would love to do watercolor painting, and actually studying her has given me some new thoughts about my capability of doing art, which I actually really love, because seeing where she came from and just exploring uh, and just trying some things, like that quote, I just had to settle down and try. Um,
Mm.
I've always like, oh, I don't know how to draw. And that actually has stopped me for a long time from painting, because I always think I have to know how to draw before I paint. And now I'm totally questioning it. Like, is that even true that I have to know that? I love that I'm asking myself this question now, because I believe now that that's not even true. I literally could just get paint and start playing. And you probably are saying the same thing. Like,
Yeah,
amen. You want
I'm
to
not.
you
I'm
want to
going to
clap for
tell
me
you.
in thinking this?
I'm going to tell you yes, do it, and dive into it, because well, learning to draw is also, it's about learning to see. And of course, you don't need to be a drawer to be a painter. Um, it can be a foundation, but it doesn't have to be. And there are many artists that paint incredibly beautifully that don't do any drawing whatsoever, and produce incredible work. Um, and really, what's the difference between a drawing and a painting? Is there actually one at all? Um, do we make a difference just because we use a paintbrush? Well, no, we can't, because we can draw with ink on paper, can't we? So that's totally out the window, and we can take a pencil to a painting as well. So we've got to release ourselves from these preconceived ideas about what things should be, and that's where you really started us with, isn't it? Is when she stopped working for other people and started to work from within for herself, and also turned to these things that are very close and important to her. It took off, didn't it? Her work just went, wow.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you said all of that. I'm gonna actually go listen back to this podcast when I listen to it. I'm gonna have to like take some notes on what you said because I love that you said that there's not much difference. There's really not any difference between drawing and painting. And I this is such a huge lesson to me personally in my own art, in my photography and in any other things that I do. Like I don't have to actually know how to do it. I can just try some things and see what
Mm.
happens and actually be inspired by, you know, what's around me. And she was so I the more I listen to Georgia O'Keeffe talk, the more I'm like, I love her. I kind of want to be her best friend and hang out with her because she would be that person
Well,
that's
so
like,
many
hey,
people did, didn't they?
I know, I'm
Everyone
so
wanted to hang
jealous.
out with her, and they went and visited her, and yeah, very social, wasn't
Then she died when I was 11, so there was no chance of that.
it?
So, but I just I think there's something magical about chasing your passion. And I'm not saying it has to consume your whole life even, but there really is something amazing about creating work for your own self. Is like what else can we learn and this doesn't have to be a whole podcast episode about what we learned from Georgia O'Keeffe, but this is how I think. Like, what did I learn from this? How can I apply this to me and my life? Like, what are you coming away from this? Like, what is she teaching you, Len?
She's teaching me to follow my own path and uh, pursue that relentlessly. And she got sidetracked, didn't she, throughout her life? You know, Stiglitz, her, and maybe that was a very important part of her life and at the time. But she also had to go. No, I need to go and do this for myself. Another really beautiful example of that is that she called it my shanty, which was that lovely little, shed at Lake George when she went down there with Stiglitz and the whole Stiglitz family, and they, you know, it appeared that they were all too much. But anyway,
Well, she was not a people person and she did not put people in her paintings. So
Oh, well, I'm not sure about that so much. I think she was marketed as a recluse, but she enjoyed people's company, didn't she?
I think so, but she spent a lot of she really enjoyed being alone and she said that. Like I enjoy being alone and sometimes being around them was too much. Like
Oh, I'm sure
they
they
probably
were.
were too much.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure they were too much, over the top too much. And but going down to this little shanty and painting, and just going and working, and then like the paintings from there are stunning too, aren't they? The beautiful mist rising over the water, the gorgeous reflections. Uh, One of my favourite things with her work is this celebration of colour for colour's sake, uh, rather than to make something that looks realistic or it has to
Mhm.
be this way. She really just explores color uh, for its own sake. And
Yeah.
another one of my favorite works of hers is that's Purple Leaves, because I love purple, and
Yes, you do.
like she pursues it over and over. There's multiple versions of these purple leaves, and obviously she just enjoys the color and pursues it because she can.
Yeah. You know what's funny is when you and I first eons ago talked about Georgia O'Keeffe, I said I love her like subtle paintings and you said, "What?" She doesn't have subtle work, and she does. Like, I think what's funny is that you were drawn to some of her stuff that's like very vibrant, and I'm drawn to things like, let's see. I saved one of them. So one of my favorites is called Abstraction White Rose. It's really white and then some black with a slight like aqua blue hues. And I love that. And even though there's like some dark in it, it is very soft. And another one I absolutely love, she has this series called Sky Above Clouds, where it looks like you're floating just above a bunch of puffy clouds looking off into the sky. So it's almost like you're
Mm.
flying. And those are very, very, also very soft. And she has a whole series of things that, these paintings that are also soft like this. And it's just interesting how she created a lot of different kind of work. And so that's probably one thing that people like, why people love her, is because she just went and did one kind of thing and then another kind of thing, and she didn't stay. She wasn't a one hit wonder. She really loved to explore all different kinds of works, and so that's why, so I think so many people can relate to her because she appeals to all kinds of people.
Well, the other night I was putting together a presentation about her, and I was putting her work in chronological order as a way to help hold it together. And it's fascinating how the themes keep reoccurring and ideas keep churning up. You often look at someone. Let's take Picasso. We've got the rose period, and then we've got the blue period, and you can look at it and go, well, that one's the blue period, and that one's the rose period. And when we look at George's, uh, we have some of these themes coming back up years uh, at different times over and over as she revisits, works ideas through again, repaints particular things, and some of the themes that continue over her whole life rather than just being quite tight. Now, obviously, there's, the paintings of In New York are about New York, and she doesn't really revisit that, but the flowers keep coming back, and these incredible skies, the sunsets,
The
um,
bones.
the abstraction.
Yeah. And that's another something that I actually wrote down while we were talking was explore in depth, like go deep. Can we not be afraid? Can I personally not be afraid to go deeper into my work? Like what is it that I want to explore on a
Mm.
deeper level? And when you find those things, then they do come back and come back. I mean, I know that you have work, Len, that you have multiple, years of photographed, like those wild orchids that you find, that your father taught you to find in the wild. I know you have a whole series of these, and this is something that you'll go walking and find them and
It's
look
orchid
for them.
season now, so
Yeah.
yes, that's where I'm off to as
Right,
soon as I
exactly.
can.
But you've been doing these. This is something that you keep revisiting. This isn't like a one time, like I found them, okay, I'm done. How can I find what I'm passionate about and revisit those in different ways? How can I go even deeper into my own work? And I love that she also teaches me that.
I have some one advice for you, Brie, and this is
Yeah.
about learning to paint. Um, like I love monochrome, and if I'm an art teacher, learning and understanding the tonal relationships in a painting can be an incredibly important foundation. And but not every painter does that. And not every painter just pursues color for its own thing. Um, if you want to look at color as an expert, look at Monet and actually see how they play with color contrasts. And um, Van Gogh would be another person that has an incredible study of color. Whereas when you look at a Caravaggio, it's a study of tone and a different sort of composition. So when I come back to saying when you dive into painting, and I really think you should, and it's a beautiful thing to do, you've got to find what excites you. You've got to find the type of painting, the medium, the subject, the colors, uh, the way of painting that satisfies you, not for an audience, as you were telling me, but the
Right.
bit that finds you. And it, it might mean studying drawing and working on that foundation, or it might not. And there isn't a universal answer to that. It's an unpacking it out for what works for you, what excites you.
Yeah, no, that's really great advice, and while you were saying that, I really just thought, maybe I would do a little Georgia O'Keeffe-ish esque type thing when I am ready to dive in. Maybe I just go to the art shop and say, "What 3 colors excite me?"
Oh,
and
well,
get
that's a
those.
great. We're going to have a guest in the future. Her name's Julie, and she actually did that. And we're going to talk to her
Oh,
about
I wanna talk to
just
her
going
about
to the
this,
art
yeah.
shop and buying her favorite colors and coming home and starting painting. So
Yeah,
she's going to
doesn't
be a
that sound fun?
guest in the future.
Yeah,
Why
I
not?
really thought I know, I thought I can pick maybe it's more than 3, but anyway. And then, I love the way watercolor plays on paper, and I really just thought I would just play with how the different colors touch each other and just play with that, and I don't have to actually, put any pressure on myself to actually make anything. For now, I can just see what they do, because that actually is a lot of painting is how does this medium, this is a lot of what we do as artists, is how does the medium, how does it work? How do we
Hmm.
mold it and form it and shape it into what we want it to be? And I really love, that Georgia O'Keeffe did that all her life, that she allowed herself to do all that play. And even towards the end of her life, she lost her vision. And
Hmm.
I watched this segment, m and this guy was talking, he's, one of the caretakers of the home that she lived at, and he would walk with her so that she could walk, find her way, but she would also call him in and say, "Hey, I want to paint." And she would say, "Load up this color," and he would do this, and she would say, "Okay, now help me paint a line," or, "Hey, I want you to put a circle here. All you have to do is twist the brush like this." And she really still was doing what she loved. I know. How many
I
of
think
us?
that's incredibly beautiful,
I do
isn't
too.
it?
Yeah.
It's incredibly beautiful, and the joy on his face retelling that story is such a beautiful thing. Um, it's so gorgeous. Part of all this is also working out who you are as a learner and an experimenter and a creative, and um, uh, some people that they want to work through the foundations uh, and master them before they actually go exploring. And other people are really happy to dive in and to experiment and see where it takes it. And Brie, we know where you fit on that spectrum, that you're willing to dive in and take big risks. And that's what makes your art so creative and interesting.
And thank you, Lynn. And by the way, not without sometimes doubting myself. I think sometimes, I still think some of
Fear.
that's there, not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure how this is going to turn out, but I'm willing to try. All of those things still are there. And maybe we're not so sure until things start to kind of gel and set up for us. So, but
Hmm.
I appreciate that, Lynn. One thing we haven't talked about, and I think we're probably about done, but one thing we haven't talked about on our Creative Affair podcast is this affair that Georgia O'Keeffe had with Alfred Stieglitz. And I think a lot of the passion that she exuded from the beginning of this abstract, this art that she created came from some of these emotions that she felt, um, during this time of affair. And she ended up marrying him, and he, I guess, divorced his wife. And that, she just actually did what she wanted to do. And there was a time that she was
Oh, well, they were besotted with each other, weren't they?
Yeah.
There's accounts of 40-page letters,
Yes.
and writing twice a day. And, "Oh, I'm sorry I didn't write this morning. The painting got away from me, but I'm writing now." And then sitting down and handwriting out 40 pages and then sending that off every single day. Um, you know, they're billed as this classic American romance, and it continued throughout the whole of their lives. She was there when he died, and still had emotional feelings for him, and despite all the pain and that went between their relationship as well. It's
Yeah.
fascinating. It's beautiful. I'm inspired to read some of their love letters, to be honest.
You can. And that's the thing is like when art can't I think you can't separate art and passion. I think that goes together, but also that comes with emotional risk. And so if you're not willing to take the emotional risk, then maybe you're not willing to like feel the passion, And so I just think that's why we must put ourselves out there and be willing to feel the pain when it comes along, because sometimes we think there's something wrong when the pain comes and we're like, wait, and that's when, sorry, my dog is barking now. We've heard from your Momo too. That's when we want to be like, oh my goodness, this is the part where I feel the pain because of all the passion that I've had, right?
Hmm.
Because of the passion that I've experienced. And anyway, I think
I agree with you, Brie, and I think we
yeah,
should talk an episode just about this issue by itself, because it is
emotions,
quite
art
well
and emotions.
about this extra passion, and it's something that writers have talked about, and it's something that I feel very, very strongly about. And we could actually track my creative output with my relationships and my feelings of love and emotion and lust and all those sort of things,
That
and
would be
my
interesting.
friendships and my creative partnerships. Like they're all tied in there together, and this energy between people, it's such a similar energy as to an energy with place.
Yeah.
And talking about Georgia and her connection with a sense of place is absolutely incredible.
Fascinating. She is brilliant and fascinating, and it's just been so interesting to study about her life. So we will put all kinds of things in the notes for you, some of the books that we explored.
The movies we watched,
Yeah.
the shows, the docos, but really, the best place to get to know someone, and this is so true for all creatives, is to study their art. Like,
Hmm.
the best place to find about who Georgia is to uh, look at her art, to immerse yourself in it. And I'm sure it's spread out through the whole of the world in
Yes, it
various
is.
art galleries. And
Chicago, London, New Mexico.
Yeah, well, I've seen them here
Everywhere.
in Australia as well, and
Yeah.
exhibitions all over the place. So go and immerse yourself with her beautiful art and be transported into your own world. And guess and imagine what hers is like, which i- that discussion and speculation is rife with her work, which is that's gorgeous too, isn't it?
Yeah. And one of the reasons, and we're going to talk, at least a few more times about different artists or, different people, on this podcast. And one of the reasons we do it, and we did an episode about it last season, which was about finding inspiration. And so we hope that, in this conversation, you found some inspiration of your own. And so go study her work and find that.
What a wonderful place to finish today on, Brie. And we've had another wonderful conversation, and it's so nice to continue our creative affair. And for
Agreed.
now, I wish to say goodbye.
Thank you for joining us in our creative affair. If you love the passion we bring to this creative content, please support the podcast by sharing with a friend, subscribing, and leaving us a review. Thanks! If you would like to learn more about creative photography, visit lenmetcalf.com, where you can find links to Len's photography school, videos, and publications. He would love to invite you to sign up to his newsletter. To find out more about my work, including my photography and mentoring in my Creative Confidence group coaching program, visit creativemindscoach.com. Thanks, and see you next time. Bye!